insertion into a linked list, adding an element to the beginning of a list. If the head pointer is null, the list is empty and the new element will be its only member. If the head pointer is not null, the list already contains one or more elements. In either case, however, the procedure for adding a new element to the start of the list is the same. Output. Create an instance of the structure allocating memory space using malloc open close bracket. Set the next pointer of the new element to the current value of the head pointer. This will be null if the list is empty, or the address of the current first element otherwise. Make the head pointer point to the new element. Adding an element to the beginning of a list. Here is a code to perform this task. Adding an element to the beginning of a list. Example. Output. Warning. It is important to switch the pointers in the correct order. If one reassigns the head pointer, first one will lose the list. The malloc function is used to allocate the memory for the new element. As each new element is added, only the memory needed for it is allocated. The calloc function could also be used. One should be aware of the differences between these two functions. The main difference is that calloc will initialize the new element, malloc will not. Adding an element to the end of the list. To add an element to the end of a linked list, one needs to start at the head pointer and go through the list until one finds the last element. Create an instance of the structure allocating memory space using malloc. Set the next pointer in the last element to point to the new element whose address is returned by malloc. Set the next pointer in the element to null to signal that it is the last item in the list. Adding an element to the end of the list. Here is the code. Adding an element to the end of the list. Example. Output. Adding an element to the middle of the list. When one is working with a linked list, most of the time one will be adding elements to somewhere in the middle of the list. Exactly where the new element is placed depends on how one keeps the list. For example, if it is sorted on one or more data elements. This process then requires that one first locates the position in the list where the new element will go and then add it. Adding an element to the middle of the list. In the list, locate the existing element that the new element will be placed after. Let's call this the marker element. Create an instance of the structure allocating memory space using malloc. Set the next pointer of the new element to the element that the marker element used to point to. Set the next pointer of the marker element to point to the new element whose address is returned by malloc. Open close bracket, close bracket. Adding an element to the middle of the list. Here's how the code might look. Adding an element to the middle of the list. Example. Output.